Welcome to another episode of Express Outdoors State of Waterfowl series. I'm Doug Miller down here at Gros Savon in South Louisiana. And if you had listened to our part one of this series, we have a special guest, Mr. Lee Kjos, well-known photographer and avid outdoorsman, passionate duck hunter from Minnesota. And we got Cason over in Memphis with Bill Byers Hunter Club and good old Jimbo in Ronquest in Stuttgart, Arkansas tonight. And if you haven't listened to part one, I really encourage you to go back. We're talking to Lee tonight about what he feels are some of the issues with waterfowling and getting a perspective from an avid outdoorsman in the Minnesota, Canada area. So when we left off part one, Jim, you were kind of talking about some things going on in Missouri, mid-lateral areas. Won't you continue with that question you were about to ask Lee?
Yeah, sure thing. So, Lee, with everything we've been talking about tonight and all the changes we see in duck hunting since we were youngsters growing up duck hunting all across the country, but you hear a lot of talk nowadays about the mid-latitude states, Missouri, Kansas, Illinois. But when you go back and you look at their harvest numbers and their midwinter numbers, I mean, they're relatively flat, although Missouri's midwinter was up a little bit this year, but their harvest numbers aren't that great if those harvest rates are true. But you also hear a lot about flooded corn and flooded hot foods, and you see it's pretty prevalent up there from even around here some, but you see it more as you get West Tennessee, West Kentucky, Northeast Arkansas, Southeast Missouri, up to the St. Louis latitude up there. That combined with all the other changes we've seen in duck hunting, decoys, calls, everything else, ducks turning nocturnal, us training ducks. Do you see us ever turning that back around? Do you ever see us winding the clock back to seeing to where when Arkansas had 50,000 duck hunters shooting 500,000 ducks versus 100,000 duck hunters shooting 500,000 ducks? Do you ever see it turning around?
Only if major changes happen, and they would have to come from legislation, not internal. I don't think the hunting community can do it. I think it would have to be law.
What type of laws do you think? What kind of laws do you think it would take?
Let me ask you. You brought up a term, hot food. What does that one mean? What is that?
The hot foods, as we talked about it, would be flooded crops, rice, corn, stuff that's high in carbohydrates versus say like moist soil,
versus moist soil,
versus everybody wants corn crazy. And I'm okay with some corn. I'm okay with some of it. I think some of that is good. Give ducks a buffet, but when you look at duck energy days, you can feed more ducks longer on natural foods than you can hot foods.
Right.
And it's hard to explain that to people that may manage duck clubs. I got good friends that are duck club managers and are really good at it. But I'm thinking, man, if we could change up our food sources here, we could feed more ducks longer and keep your hunting up for a longer period of time. That's a whole nother subject.
Oh, well, it's a great subject, and it's one that probably should be talked about a lot and more openly than it really is. I'll go on the record as saying, I'm a fan of moist soil because I believe moist soil is habitat. It's more habitat than anything. And I also believe that the private sector does great things when it comes to habitat that 501s can't do or don't have the resources to do. So to me, and this is another thing, habitat and conservation is like number one to me. Number one. Without that, this is going to be a dying conversation and a dying sport. So we have to have it. Now, the flooded corn thing, really, to me, is an odd thing because it's a non-factor in the north. We don't have it, right? But as the season goes on and I start to go down south and I'm working or photographing for somebody, or maybe I get lucky enough to hunt or whatever, I hear it more down there. And I heard it more this year than ever. And it seems to me that the more and more of it that there is, and you guys jump in because you guys know more about this than I do. I'm just going to say what it seems like. When you eliminate opportunities for people or DIY people that have been doing this for years, when you start to eliminate and alter what greenheads are normally doing, I don't think that's good. I don't see how that's going to have a happy ending. But you guys can rebuttal. You guys can tell me, nah, Kjos, you're wrong there. That's not right. And I would, because it's like I say, it's not in the north. But I've heard I heard people this year were like, well, they're sitting on corn. And they sit on corn all day and they come back here at night. And then they go back there during the day. They do this. Nobody's shooting any ducks. I don't know how that's good for us. But
it's not. At some point in time, how's that going to allow some young guys to get involved in it? I think one of our mutual friends made a post the other day. Jeff Foyles was talking about that very thing, yep. and he used to plant a bunch of it. Again, I think some flooded corn is good, but we got to understand, number one, the mallard resource, our duck resource, that has to come first. And then as long as we're carry it and we're getting a solid opportunity to hunt that resource and enjoy that resource and hang a stack of greenheads on a strap, we're going to keep continuing to pursue them. So when you look at the long term of it and you start considering license sales and federal duck stamp sales and all that goes into waterfowl in North America, which is the most studied population group there is, and all the money spent, if we don't make it where folks can enjoy that resource, along with keeping that resource productive, everything's going to start going away. So we're going to need some more young Casons, young Lees, young Jimbos, young Dougs, young Clays that want to start doing this again. We need them to come back and need to keep them involved. So that all kind of falls together there, I think, as we look at the long term and look at the future. I don't know how to turn it around. I don't know if it's possible to turn around, but I'm curious about your opinion on that.
I don't know how to turn that around I don't know how to turn it around, but I do believe if it is going to turn around, it has to start with narrative change, and narratives that I believe, this might be a little radical to say here, but I think there's false narratives out there that aren't very good for the long-term health of the sport. When you remove the next generation or their will or their want to do this, we're done.
We're done.
We're done. We're done. And if you look at narratives, and I believe there's a handful of them out there that I find disturbing. And what I mean by that is, like, when I see it or I read it, I'm like, oh, really, man? Really? And so I'll lay a couple on you. I grew up in northern Minnesota on a hunting and fishing resort. And northern Minnesota is like rifle season for deer is everything, right? It's like probably opening a duck season in Stuttgart, right? It's everything. And I saw a kid, somebody shot a big buck, and of course they pull up to the local bar at Hayslip's Corner, and some 12 or 13-year-old boy walked out and with his dad, and he went to the back of the truck and he asked the guy that shot it, the first words that came out of his mouth were, "What did it score?" And I thought about that, and I'm like, when I was 12 years old, I didn't even know what score meant, right? It doesn't have anything to do with the hunt. It was just like, what did it score? Not the story. And then if I fast forward, you look at now and you look in the waterfowl community, and I see these like hashtags, I guess, in social media, and it's piles make smiles. Well,
and we grind. We grind it.
And the grind. I'm sick and tired of the word grind, dude. I got news for you. Waterfowling is not a grind. Okay,
hey, I love it the other day. I got on my soapbox and done the same thing.
I can't stand it. I can't stand it. Okay, so really a grind. If it's a grind, get the out of the sport.
Find you a new hobby. Damn it. I mean, I did this on another podcast the other day. Exactly. I said, look,
well, that's it.
It's a grind for you to go. I do it. I get to do this for a living, and I'm fortunate I get to do it. I had some long days. I got tired of making 2 sets a day and getting in after dark, but it was not a grind. I enjoyed it. If it's a grind, go find you a new hobby, partner. Go take up golf, tennis, or racquetball. Just get the hell out.
100%, man. And then this smiles make piles. I'm like, so what happens if you don't shoot a pile? More smiles? Really? That's why you're out there, is to make a pile? Me, dude. Really? We're screwed. If that's going to happen. There's another one that I heard not long ago, and it's take it to the plug.
Run or drive, boys. Run or drive.
Really? Let him plug and go, dude. Let him rip. It don't matter if there's 60 yards and you're shooting at the RAS. Even though we have between 3.4 and 3.7 million lost birds a year due to crippling, take it to the plug, dude.
Keep pulling the trigger.
That has got to stop.
Amen.
It's got to stop.
I'm with you.
And what we need maybe is a few older dudes like us that can mentor a handful of younger dudes, but I'm telling you, dude, it's got to come from the youth. It's got to come from them.
But I think to your point, though, we are going to have to do. I'm not going to say we, because it's not fair to bring y'all into it. I see Cason take his boys hunting, and I take a few here and there, but I think it comes from me, not just me, but doing a better job bringing those young guys in and going, no, dude, that's not how you play the game. We're going to play the game this way, you know?
Right.
I think that helps a lot.
Right.
But I'm with you.
And Lee, you would have had fun with Jimbo and I the other day. We were on a float hunt one morning.
I'm just going to talk about that. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, it was, really one of the more enjoyable hunts I had this year. We quit hunting. We could have killed several more ducks, but we were too busy running our mouths and having a good time. But we went down this rabbit hole about grinding on them and making them pay rent, all these things that just kill me. And it got bad enough we made them turn the camera off so we weren't sitting there recording ourselves joking about it. But maybe that's what we should do, just like we're having this conversation here. It's a wrong mentality. I make them pay rent. This is a resource. We're supposed to pay back to this.
We're supposed to be paid.
They have to.
Yeah, it's the wrong way to look at it, and it's a culture thing. And we kind of talked about that culture, a generation of duck hunters that don't understand the culture. And I'm Jimbo, I get on my soapbox all the time about taking kids. I think that's the only thing you can do. We got to take youth. We had to teach them the right way. And that's yeah.
Have to.
No, we got to do it, man, because if not, it's going to go away. And we all know that. I do know a few kids that I think is going to be willing to take our spot down the road. But how many of them is it? Just how many people will eventually be buying duck stamps and wanting to lease ground, buy ground, just be all involved in the waterfowl world. And the one thing I appreciate about you, Lee, is you appreciate our history and heritage. And that's something else I think we have to teach is the heritage, because it's a very historical sport that we're involved in, and we need to keep that up and running. Whether you're on the Arkansas Grand Prairie, you're in South Louisiana, the East Coast, wherever you may be, it's deep and storied, and we need to continue to propagate that.
Yeah, and we got to get youth involved in conservation and habitat and thinking about being responsible. I mean, there's just narratives have got to switch. They got to change.
And that's,
they do.
you know, we're with what we're doing tonight, that will help. I want to do more of it this year if we start laying out different TV episodes. I want to talk about that some and get it out there. You know, you may take a little heat back on it, but that's okay. I got
big, well, I'm sure. I mean, anything that's hard, any issue, I mean, there's always going to be heat that comes along with it, but it's got to get out in the open. You got to get it out.
I agree. Yeah. I put a post up the other day, just kind of end of season post, and it was a picture of a nice hunt. Man, it was, I don't know, 6-7 limited ducks. We had a good one, and I hit on the grind thing, you know.
God, dude.
Everybody, nobody got in there and back. Nobody said. Everybody's like, "Yeah, that's good. You're right." But I really wanted one of the people to get on there and try to argue it, but they didn't. Or I haven't looked at it in a couple of days. They may be today, but I'm with you on that.
Jimbo, you're waterfall royalty. Nobody's going to get on you, dude.
Man, I don't know about all that.
No way, dude. No, they're not going to get on you, man. No way.
I'm beginning to think that Lee's a little more into social media than he leads on to, because I haven't heard those hashtags yet. I have to go look for some.
Oh no. I mean, personally, I'm not, but for Boss Shot Shells, I mean, I'm on it. I run that feed. And I struggle with it, though, dude. I do. I don't like it. I don't.
You know, all joking aside, you know, in part one, we talked about pressure a little bit. And what you just said is a whole nother pressure that we didn't even talk about. Mm-hmm. And your average hunter that's sitting at the house that only goes a couple times, or he's saying, what can I do to help the duck population? Well, there's one thing that everyone can do. Be selective in when and where you shoot, you know, and talked about the number of cripples that go back. That could have a huge impact if everybody just held on to the trigger a little longer and only made key shots. So
that's right.
Good point. We haven't really covered that when we think about pressure.
I have you guys might know him. I have a good friend in Missouri. His name's Jeff Watt. And I call him the mayor. And we were talking the other day, and like when we hunt timber, we hunt water in Missouri or whatever, it's your turn to shoot. It's your turn to shoot. If we shoot a limit, yeah, cool. If we don't, yeah, it's fucking awesome. It's just great to be out. I asked him the other day, and we shoot sub-gauge guns, right? We shoot little guns, 410s and 28s. And he's a responsible shooter. He knows exactly what he's doing. He kills them when he wants to kill them. And I asked him, I said, how many ducks did you lose this year? And he goes, me or like the people I'm with? I'm like, you personally? He goes, none. And it's not that it's that outrageous. It's that it's how he shoots them, right? He calls them. He shoots finished birds. They're dead. He's got a great retriever. I mean, it's really not that hard, right? If you take care of, again, narrative changes. I don't know that many people, especially youth anymore, that actually pattern their gun. When I was a kid, we called that woodsmanship skills. They don't pattern. How do you know what the hell you're doing? There's all kinds of things that can add up to a big difference. Those particular things we could change as a community ourselves without any legislation change, any federal mandates. We don't need better habitat conditions. We don't need more water. It doesn't. I know we could cut that crippling rate in half if narrative switched. I know we could. Think about that.
Really good point.
3.4 to 3.7 million a year. If we took it upon ourselves, I want to cut my number in half. If we all took that on, we'd send 1.8 million north next spring to breed. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Yep, that's sizable.
Right?
You bet.
So that's one of those narratives, and I'm going to try to help push it through, boss. I call it know the shot, not KNO, but NO. No, be responsible enough to know yourself off a crippling shot. Don't take it. There'll be another one. There'll be another one. I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Don't you think we could do that?
I think it's worth trying because
I do too.
I think it, like you said, when you look at those numbers, it certainly all adds up to, if you send more back, the chance to send more, recruit more back to the wintering grounds next year is that much better.
Every one we lay off, dude, is one that's going back.
To your point, you talked about Watt. I hunted with Jeff this year, I think right after you were there. I was passing through. Little old Patch Woods had a bunch of ducks one morning and handed me a Model 21 side-by-side, Model 21 Winchester side-by-side 28 gauge.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I've killed ducks with 28 before, but I've never shot a side-by-side much, and I don't claim to be a good shot anyway.
Yeah, right.
I went to throw it up. I was like, man, which barrel do I look down? and old Green Top come in there, and he just said, take my picture. You know, he come belly up in there and just shoot him. I threw up, flipped the switch, and man, wham. I said, there it is right there. Every duck I shot at was dead. Dead right there. You know, it don't get no better than that. That's what
I think all the duck hunting Watt and I did this year, I don't think we lost a bird. I don't think so. That feels pretty good.
Yeah, I can't say that. Yeah. I lost some.
No, but you put a lot more days in than I do. And I here's again, like when you're in timber, you know what, like when you're shooting birds at 25 yards, you really shouldn't be losing many, you know. But there are circumstances where it gets pretty hard, dude. It's gonna happen. I'm not saying it's not gonna happen, but I'm saying consciously, as a culture, I believe that is one that we can change on our own.
That goes a long way to your point. I thought was so good. That's something we can do without any mandates, without any new laws. Because, good Lord, we've got enough laws and rules in duck hunting now. We don't need any more. But that's things we can do as a group to change our culture and send more ducks back to the breeding grounds. I like it. I'm going to try to help you push it.
Well, I have the artwork almost done for it. I'll start to share it with you guys, and then maybe we'll make that like an off-season project to keep people enthused in the summer.
Be a good one.
Yeah.
You know, I heard something interesting the other day, Lee. The guy you work with, Brandon, there, he was talking about he shoots a full choke and he patterns and does all his homework, but he said that he shoots a full because he wants a clean kill or a clean miss. Mm-hmm. And I never really heard someone say it like that. And I heard that. I was like, man, how true is that? Like, that's just
clean kills and clean misses. That's another one. I find no shame in a clean miss. None.
I do it a lot. I have no problem with it.
Me too. Yeah. So, I mean, it's one of those. It's just another one of those things that can seriously change the number of lost birds a year due to crippling. That's one.
So Lee, you've had some really great ideas, and we've talked about different things. Is there anything else that you think we can do to right the ship, so to say? You know, we've got the way this new adaptive harvest management plan is. Should we be considering shorting seasons, lessening limits? Is that being helpful?
I mean, I guess I'd like to see if we all agree, and I'm sure we probably do. That's why we're on this together. That there's things that we see are problematic, and if things don't change, they're probably going to get worse. So would I like to see things implemented that maybe even try it for a year or two or a couple of years and see if it does matter, if it changes, I mean, are you asking me what I think they are?
Well,
I find it odd that you can hunt flooded corn. I find that odd. I'm not saying I'm not picking on anything, and I sure as hell don't want to start a race war or anything here. But I find that if most people, other than the people that have it, if the rest of the duck hunters find it very problematic, well then I would think that would be one that we would need to look at, wouldn't you guys?
So, as a South Louisiana boy in rice country down here, obviously from a selfish waterfowl standpoint, if corn is holding my birds back,
right,
then absolutely I'd love to ban it. But also, we hunt over flooded rice crops that we have a warm climate here. We have a ratoon crop that comes back naturally, whether we flood it or not. Come duck season, we've got second crop rice out there for the ducks. And so that makes me really nervous as a duck manager.
Right.
If I tell the guy in the mid-lateral latitude states that he can't flood corn, then how do you eliminate me from flooding rice? Now, is flooded corn natural? In my opinion, no. Whereas flooded rice, rainwater is going to cover some of it. So I guess you could argue that either way. But I just know when the legislature gets involved, it seems like everybody leans on law, and you can't be specific to an area. So I get a little nervous when we talk about laws about flooding corn.
Yeah, laws in general. I mean,
although I don't disagree with what the observations we're talking about. I mean, it appears from what I'm hearing, it's got to be having an effect on something with the waterfowl movement.
I don't think you can argue that it has an impact. Anybody that says it has zero impact, probably has an agenda. It has to have some impact. I think the thing that I would like to see before we really, and maybe that's where we should conduct some kind of study. The thing I would like to see before we really wade off into it is how much of an impact is it having? Can we quantify how many acres of corn are being left? Doug, I'm kind of with you. I don't want to be a hypocrite. I don't want to say, we have to ban that. You can't do that anymore. Back in the 80s, the government paid us for set-aside ground. We would grow millet and milo on it. We got paid to not farm it. We'd flood milo, we'd flood millet, and we'd kill a bunch of ducks over it. So, and that's also kind of my argument to the guys that are, whatever year, it changed, it became legal. We did it decades ago. It's been going on for a long time. But Lee, to your point, it's not natural, and I don't think it's a positive thing for the sport. It may be positive for the guy that's doing it. That's probably not positive for the sport. So could merit some looking into.
Yeah, like I said, for me, it's, I'm a northern boy, and it's a non-factor in the north, right? I see it or hear it as I go south, and it just seems like it's almost like at times it's haves and have-nots.
And that's kind of what it turns into. But is it really any different in my lifetime? I mean, there has
probably
been
not.
In my lifetime, there's been people hunting over flooded corn since I was a kid. It's nothing new. Some people try to say it's something new. It's really not. But is it really any different than if you really worked at having? And I'm not sticking up for anybody. But is it really any different than if you worked hard at developing a moist soil crop full of barnyard grass and smartweed and some really good natural foods that you tried to really turn into? You worked at trying to make those be the best they can be, and then flood them in the fall. Is it really any different than that on a natural food deal that you tried to manicure? I don't know. There's a slippery slope there, and maybe it's not a slippery slope. There's a big wide gray area. But as a wildlife manager or waterfowl manager specifically, I want to do the best I can on the property I take care of to offer as many groceries as I can. The thing I see statewide here at home is we don't have the groceries we used to have. My neighbor here where I live, the farm my house sits on, we talk all the time. We're good friends, but he talks about the ducks that used to be here when he was a kid. Yet now this year we've got 300 acres flooded right here by the house. And the past week, there's been 300 or 400 mallards right here in shooting range of my lean-to in the mornings when I get up. And that's pretty cool. And this field's had duck use. It's been flooded since early November, and it's had waterfowl use every day since early November. Some days a lot, some days pretty slim, but there's been waterfowl use on this place the whole year. So that's a good thing in a way. And if we can get more people to do that, that's going to help our recruitment in this part of the world. And to Doug also, you know, you look at what's happened in South Louisiana, change from rice production to sugar cane just outside the marsh. If we could enhance those habitats, that's going to be good. So you talk about enhancing it, whether it's a flooded hot food or a flooded natural food, is there really a lot of difference there? I don't know. I'm asking that question.
No, I don't. Like I said, I hear it. I hear about it the farther south I get, but in the north where I'm from, it's nothing. You know, I mean, Jeff, you mentioned foils. I mean, we talked about it. I mean, he was ranting about it here, what, a month ago?
Oh, I just read something the other day he put up, and he made a lot of sense. He talked about a 70 square mile area up there where he lives.
And he knows. He knows
yeah,
it.
he knows what's going on. He talked about it's the worst duck season he ever had. And he say no ducks, and he talked about the number of ducks that they held there. He said it was unbelievable. He said, and he saw them, you know. So, I mean, his idea, we're back to the idea we've trained them. You know, I've got a good friend that manages a farm in West Tennessee, and he was a firm believer in corn. And now he's like, man, we need to get away from corn. I got a buddy that's got a place in Oklahoma. He owns the largest contiguous block of bottomland hardwood in Oklahoma. And he was talking about one year I was out there, he had corn. And he said, man, I'll never do that again. I talked to him yesterday, and he said, man, we've quit using corn. We've tried to establish our moist soil areas. We've tried to, and he said, we're shooting more ducks than we ever have, and we're not having to fight the corn, and ducks are coming to the woods every day. Maybe he's on to something there. I don't know.
Right.
But there's something to all of it.
That makes sense to me. That what that fella's saying, right? And also, I bet it really is the degree of, or maybe the degree of it becoming a problem is probably more regional than a broad. Like you know what I mean? It's probably a bigger it's probably a lot bigger deal in isolated locations than other areas.
Mm-hmm. No, I get that. I smell what you're stepping in there. An example there is a place called, you're probably familiar with it, a place called the Darden Club up the Mississippi River from St. Louis. It's one of the older duck clubs in the area, goes back to the late 1800s. Not that they don't have flooded corn in the places they hunt, but their rest area and their main hunting area is all natural foods. Now, the manager there, Levi Byers does a really good job at trying to establish and propagate those natural foods, and he works on that. But that's their main thing that holds ducks is natural food. So, and that's a place that will hold a lot of ducks, you know, in the mid latitude, right up just above St. Louis, which affects us and affects Doug. So, and Cason. So, you can make an argument that it's still manipulated, whether it's a hot food or natural food.
Right, I get. So natural food to you is moist soil?
Well, that would be the barnyard grasses, all different smart weeds and whatnot. That's all part of what we
smart weed, wild millet, yep.
You bet, all that stuff. The natural food is moist soil, basically.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. What do you guys think about that? What have you seen a big? You guys live in it. You guys live there. What have you seen? Have you seen what Jimbo calls hot food? Have you hot crop? What do you call it? Hot food or hot crop?
Hot food, hot crop, same thing. Cason gets it. Cason and I talk about it all the time.
Have you seen that have a huge effect on mallards imprinting and doing things they normally didn't do before?
Yes or no? That's tough to say. I don't know the answer to that. I mean, mallards are doing. It's been a slow evolution to the level of nocturnal activity that we saw this year. I feel like we've been seeing that coming. I think it's more pressure related. We had a mallard hen that we banded last February. She ended up back in our part of the world right before season opened. She was staying in the woods at night and would leave the woods and feed in a bean field of ours that had absolutely no grain left in it. Been floated for probably 6 weeks, but it had a healthy crop of invertebrates in it. So she's feeding 3 o'clock in the morning, middle of the night, eating invertebrates before season ever came in this year. So that wasn't necessarily a hunting pressure in our part of the world, unless you want to factor the early goose season. But she'd been getting shot at wherever she came from, so season wasn't new to her. You know? That's a little bit different activity. Go ahead.
When did you guys in the South start noticing nocturnal greenheads? When did that start? And then why? When did it start and why? And then I'll tell you the first time I saw it.
And it started a little bit that I remember in the late 80s, early 90s. You started seeing some of it then, but it really started being more evident in probably the past 10 years. Been more prevalent, I think, in the past 10.
Yep.
Really amped up in the past 3. And I kind of owe it, if you look in the past 3 to 5, the advancements in decoys and calls. Probably decoys more so than the calls, in decoys that look and act more, mimicking live ducks on the water. That being said, they finally figure out that they don't look just right. They can pick out, they learn to pick that out really quick, but yet all that movement and flipping and flapping and moving water and everything that we used to say that a jerk cord did, well, triple that. We're past everything there. So that's kind of how I see it's gotten worse. But I can remember going back as a kid, ducks feeding at night. But it used to be, if you had a full moon night, go to the woods, ducks would come back to the woods, in the morning after full moon. Now they'll just go back to the field or stay in the field all day.
Okay.
So I couldn't say it better.
Go ahead.
So, Lee, in South Louisiana, obviously we don't have the landscape for corn, but in the last 5 years, we've had some of the clubs down here has learned how to plant Japanese millet. And we've got some guys that planted a phenomenal crop of millet adjacent to the marsh. And they hold a phenomenal amount of birds. Now, not mallards, because that's a bonus duck down here now. We shoot a variety of everything. But the ducks they hold are from sunset to sunrise. They don't kill anything. They hunt 2 or 3 times a week, and their hunter success is virtually zero unless you get lucky on a rainy day. Those birds come in by the droves a half hour after sunset, and when those guys' lights turn on and they're four-wheelers at the gate, the entire flock gets up and exits. And it happens till they eat the place out. So it's not only happening with mallards, and it's not only corn, it's with all species of ducks.
Okay.
Good. That's good. That's good, Doug.
So I don't think you can, here we're seeing it happening with millet. So I don't know. It's
that just.
Okay. So what makes them nocturnal? Pressure, or the fact that they have flooded crop, hot food?
Man,
look, to your point, what you said, Jimbo, I saw it in the late 80s, early 90s. 2010, I think it started to increase. The last 3 or 4 years have been obvious. The 80s or 90s, it was more lunar cycle. You would see it come and go with the moon. I think the last 3 or 4 years, the pressure and food have been the 2 big things. I think food has been a big thing because we've had such mild winters. Their energy, you just don't have the duck energy days. It's not rampant to go eat in the middle of the day. Have first thing in the morning, they're loafing. And that's been kind of the last couple of years. Are you seeing that in your part of the world too?
No, I say I'm with you there, Cason. Pressure and food, natural selection. The ones that stay alive and don't get shot at, don't get pressured, and learn to stay away from the guns. So I think you're seeing a step of evolution there. And it's interesting what Doug said. You talk about jack millet. You and I don't think about jack millet as a hot food, whether it's planted or not. We think that as a planted natural food, but really, to Lee's point, it really is a hot food. It works the same way as what you and I would call hot food here in Arkansas, rice or corn. So they're going to it. They know they can go there to eat, and they can go somewhere else to rest during the day to stay away from the guns. And where Doug is, there's gosh, what is there, 3 or 4 federal refuges within a, pretty close proximity to you there. So they're learning how they can go eat, go stay away from the guns, and feed at night. So, it doesn't matter if it's corn. To the people that say it's all corn. I think it kind of blows that theory up a little bit, Doug. It's not just corn. It's a food base that they can get to and not be harassed while they're in it.
Well, and Jim, you're somewhat familiar with this area. It's next to Hillman's Marsh. On our property we own, there's a tract of land. It's probably a good 1,500 acres of open eroded marsh. It is an aquatic desert. There's nothing out there. And those birds will sit in the middle of that aquatic desert till it's time to get up. And the reason I know this is I actually deer hunt in the area, so I'm there at these hours to watch this happen. And when the sun goes down, when I say droves and droves, whether it's green-winged teal, shovelers, gadwalls, whatever, they are coming, and they come in full force. And the next morning, I mean, I can see the lights of the four-wheeler crank up, and they ain't even left the camp yet. And the whole bunch in one wad gets up. It's hard to say the sky gets black because it's dark, but literally you can see the silhouette of a black cloud get up in one time and all heads south and go sit out there in that open water all day till it's time to come back.
They'll go sit out in the Gulf all day and then come back.
They'll sit somewhere, wherever they're not at.
I don't doubt it. Right there where you cross the bridge, like if you go from Grant's Place and you're going down to Cameron, I forget which refuge that is, but when you cross that bridge there on the left, there's always a huge pile of ducks right there every time I've been there.
So it's interesting.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think what we're getting at is kind of, we know that a buck's home range gets smaller as he gets older. The longer these birds survive, the more we press them, the smarter they're getting, the more they're going to hold tight and do the things they know to keep alive.
Yep.
The biologist buddy of mine talks about rain kills ducks. Well, rain kills ducks because they get new habitat, they spread out, they go somewhere they hadn't been, and they get shot. But I think there's something else. We've tiptoed around it a little bit. I kind of want to ask Lee's opinion. We talk about the numbers and we're not really seeing them. Are they there? Are they what some people call paper ducks? Is it time to consider that? Yeah, is it time to consider that maybe AHM should be readjusted for the lack of acres that we've talked about?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I mean, that's way more a question for like biologists, especially older biologists that remember what things used to be like. But I mean, I don't see ducks nowhere near like I used to. And I think there's lots of things. I think in the north, you've had, well, first of all, like, you go to Prairie Canada, I don't think you need to shoot 8, right? I think 8's a lot, right? I don't mind. I mean, would it kill anybody if the limit was reduced to 4? I mean, I know there's people that don't want to hear that, but I mean, would that help? I mean, but then I've also heard people say that they think hunter mortality really doesn't have that large of effect. I mean, we've been in liberal limits and liberal season dates for how long now? I mean,
20 some years.
It's been a long time since things have changed, right? I don't know. Is it time to look at it? I'm just saying I don't know the answer to that. but I'm game to try anything, because dropping my limit of birds from one or two birds, I'm telling you, dude, it ain't going to stop me from going duck hunting. Right? So, I mean, I'd like to see some things. I'd like to at least see something that people think would change things, because I don't think we can continue on the path we're on and this have a good ending. I really don't.
So Lee, this is kind of putting your outdoor industry hat on. I think we talked about heritage, we talked about sunrises, we talked about it's not about making piles, and you just said that you're okay not killing what the current limits are. Mm-hmm. But we all, I think, agree that opportunity days are more important than how many ducks we kill. We all want to go hunting. The more we're in the field, the better for all of us, and outdoor industry included. Mm-hmm. So the way this AHM plan is set up, the states are dictated only into 3 scenarios of they either 6 and 60, basically 4 and 45, or 3 and 30 in their season settings. Well, man, nobody wants to see 3 and 30, but not so much from the 3, but more from the 30. Mm-hmm. You know, I've asked this several times, and this would take legislation to change this, and this would be huge. Should we get away from those scenarios, and can we find another happy medium with less ducks with the same amount of days, where we got opportunities to go maybe 60 days with 3 or 4 ducks, whatever the magic number is, but at least we have opportunity to go. Mm-hmm. Is it time to re-look at that program? Mm-hmm. Well, what's your guys' opinions on that?
Well, I agree with that, but I am also going to say this. I didn't want to make it sound like I don't care about harvest or I don't care about killing ducks, because if people aren't killing ducks, they're going to go away from the sport. But I'm just saying, does it have to be? You go to Saskatchewan, and I believe the limit still it's 8, and you're allowed 3 times your 8, so 24 ducks, right? I mean, I don't know. You really need that many? You know, but I agree with you. Hunting opportunities are huge. But quality hunting opportunities are even a bigger deal, right? That's what I believe. And quality also does not have to be you're shooting full bag limits every day. That's one of those narrative shifts that's got to happen. But a quality experience, I've told people this many times in my life. I don't need to kill them, but I do need to be in them. I gotta see them. I have to see them. If I don't, I can watch ducks all day long, and I'm happier than hell.
Yeah, but you know, and maybe this is a Louisiana thing, but I know there's been several instances, even fishing wise. The redfish limit used to be 50. Unheard of.
What did? The what?
Redfish. Big redfish. So the state reduced it to 5, and it was, oh my goodness, this is unbelievable. We can't have this. Fast forward to today. Did you get your redfish? It got my limit. Fired up, high 5, and they only caught their 5. You know, same way with teal season. We used to kill 4 teal. We'd kill our limit. We'd come in with 4 per person, high 5, and now we can kill 6, and we come in the same morning, and we're 1 short, complaining it wasn't any good, when we're still killing twice as many as we did the year before when the limit was 4. So how much of this limit thing is a mental thing with us, you know? And
well, you like just what you just said right there. When you go to South Dakota and you're allowed 5 greenheads, right? You go to Saskatchewan and you shoot 5, it's a bust. What?
Yeah.
Yep.
You're not even thinking right. Mm-hmm. I think people need to get back to celebrating the sport of hunting and quit worrying about numbers and limits and what did it score. Get rid of that, dude. That's not what it's about.
It goes back to the old how many hat theory, right? So
yep.
I had a buddy in Louisiana said, "Man, Jimbo, he said, I'm gonna make $1 million off a how many hat." I said, "A what?" He said, "I'm gonna make a how many hat." He said, "Every time you go, if you're going hunting or fishing, and you come back into town, you go to the local coffee shop, and you walk inside, what's the first thing they ask you? They don't ask you if ducks called good. They don't ask how your dog did. They don't ask you if your boat run good. They don't ask you if the fish were biting. They ask you how many. How many did you kill? How many did you catch? It's all about how many. So we do away with the how many deal, we're better off. That being said, every statistician will tell you that days kill ducks, not limits. So, because not everybody's shooting a limit every day, they'll tell you that days kill ducks. I mean, that's just throwing that out there. Not that I don't disagree, because I think that would help a lot. Hunter satisfaction, if they think they found a limit and his limit was 2 instead of 4, they would be just as happy.
Yep.
I think in the big picture of things, there's days probably harvest more ducks than general limits do. But
that makes sense.
I agree with everything he said, though.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
that does.
Jimbo, you beat me to it on days kill duck. But to our point about harvest numbers, we all remember the point system, and we won't go down that path. But how many of you guys are happier when it was 3 and 30 than you have been at 6 and 60? Was your quality of hunting better when we were killing 3 ducks?
No, it was worse for me in the north. Yeah. Those days when we had a 2-bird limit in a 30-day season, I mean, it got dropped to that for a reason. I mean, it was bad. You're talking about that stretch in the early 80s, right?
Well, yeah.
Here was pretty good, tiny. But to your point, up north, it was tough. But
it was bad.
Yeah, that's how a lot of people got into hunting big groups of folks in the woods, hunting 8-10 people in a group so you can hunt longer, but that's where some of that came from. I can remember hunting places in the 80s under a 30-day season and old timers saying, "God damn, there's just as many ducks now as there ever was. They just don't want us to kill them." And then them few old timers that were still around now are like, "Man, they ain't ducks like there used to be. We need to back off of them." It's all about perception. It's what you see where you're at is what drives most of our perspective, right? So it's where you're at and what you get to see. Our group is fortunate enough that we're able to see more than just our backyard. So that's a little bit different perspective for sure. But a lot of folks just know what they see where they live, and you can't necessarily base a resource that's continental in scope just off what you see in your backyard.
That's a big statement, Jim. I agree with you. That's huge right there.
Yep. I think we need to try to mentor youth and get them to start thinking about conservation and habitat and participating in those things however they can, whether it's a membership or whether it's donating time. I think we have to get back to this. And I'll tell you another thing that could be quite alarming here if it happens. And it's been a long time since we've had a bad drought on the prairie. And what I mean a bad one. I mean the kind where you can't find water.
It's
right?
Common.
I mean, I saw in, I don't know if you guys know the Moss Bank, the Old Wives area of Saskatchewan, but that back in the day, Jimmy Robinson, when he used to do his annual duck forecast.
I remember reading his duck forecast.
Jimmy Robinson, and I believe it was the year 1978. I would have been 18 years old then, and in all his travels, he found there was more ducks and geese on Old Wives Lake than anywhere across all Prairie Canada. I saw Old Wives Lake in 91, like around the lead band era. I saw that 99 square mile lake was bone dry, and it had cracks in the earth that were 5 feet wide, right? Those days up there were, I'm telling you, dude, no ducks. They were gone. And if that happens right now, I wonder what kind of stomach the waterfowling community has to deal with that one. because you got to believe it's coming.
Mm-hmm.
We've been living on wet years for a long time.
History's going to repeat itself, right?
It always does, Jimbo. It always does.
You bet.
Yeah. Look at the snow cover right now. I don't think we're in great shape for this next year.
No. Prairie Canada's drier than hell, dude. Saskatchewan's bad right now. But here's what I'm going to say. If we don't change the narrative from piles make smiles to, dude, we need to celebrate the sport of hunting. We need to celebrate the sport of waterfowling, right? Because when it gets tough, that's all we're going to have, dude. We're going to have each other. That's it.
Well said, brother. Well said.
So, I don't know. Narrative changes have to happen. That's it.
I'm with you. That's a good ender right there. That's a good one. Yep.
Yeah, that's perfect timing. We're running to the end of our time slot here again. It's any last comments? I don't know how you can top that one, but did Lee, anything you want to add to that before we dismiss? Thank you for having me on, and I don't know, hearing my voice. That just means a lot. Means a lot to me. Well, I think. And Jim and Cason certainly will probably agree, and they can chime in on this. The state of waterfowl is a source of information that we're trying to get out to waterfowlers. Right. And you don't have to have a PhD or master's degree to your name. If you're one of those guys, which you certainly are, that are out there day in and day out and watching, you know what's happening. You may not be able to quantify it in the book terms like some of these guys do and have the right names, but you know what's happening. And it's always good to get guys that have dirt under their fingernails and sit down and talk to them and get a different perspective on what's happening in the world. And for me down here in South Louisiana, it's certainly a treat to listen to you and hear what's going on in Minnesota and Canada. And I hope one day maybe you and I can share a duck blind up there. I'd love to do it with all of you. Been really great. I'd love it. I know everybody here, and especially in the guys at Express that have been really good in hosting this series to get the information out to the public. Would really love to work with you in Ball Shells later this year and do whatever campaigns we can get out to keep the heritage going and keep the youth interested in duck hunting. Here, I'd like to, whoever listens to this, I'd like to leave you with one thing. If anybody said, what's that dude really like? I kind of touched on it a little earlier. I really don't care anymore. I mean, I love a good banger just as much as the rest of you guys, but I don't have to kill them, but I do have to be in them. And I think that for me is the reason I do all of it, is I want to see more ducks. I got to be in them. That's it. Well, I think there's nothing else to be said then. We're going to end it on that, guys. I'd like to thank everybody for being here and all the people out there watching Express Outdoors. Continue to watch those episodes, and we'll try to put another one together for you here pretty soon. Thank y'all.